So it's 2:15. This is my third video, and I'm going to explain chapter 2 of class 11, biological classification. Okay, again, as I had said in my second video, I have underlined all the points, all the important points according to me, and I'm going to read line by line, word to word, and explain the meaning of it. Okay. See, like other YouTubers are just explaining the important points, but I'm not doing so because a point which is important to me may not be important to you, or a point which is important to you may not be important for me. So, to avoid this confusion, I'm just going through each and every word of the NCRT and then explaining you. Okay, I'll try to complete the whole chapter within 1 hour. If I could not, then certainly I'll going to put the second video, the part 2 of this same series. Okay, so chapter 2, biological classification. Since the dawn of civilization, there have been many attempts to classify living organisms. It was done intensively, not using criteria were scientific were scientific, but born out of needs to use organisms to their own use for food, shelter, and clothing. Okay, so earlier classification was based on how the animal is used. Okay, I had explained you the same thing in first chapter also. Next, Aristotle was the earliest one to attempt on more scientific basis. See, earlier there were many classification on the basis of uses, which were not scientific. But Aristotle was the first one who classified the organisms on scientific basis. Okay, so he used simple morphological characters to classify plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. He also divided animals into two groups, those which had red blood and those did not. Okay, so plants were divided into trees, shrubs, and herbs. Okay, then animals were divided into red blood animals which had red blood cells and animals which did not have red blood cells. Okay, basically the red blood cells having organisms are all vertebrates. Okay, they belong to phylum chordata, but the organisms which did not have red blood cells were all invertebrate majorly. Okay, so we have this box over here, magical box over here. We should see what is there in this. Okay, anemia and anemia sorry anemia and anemia. Anemia is are those animals which were having blood cells, red blood cells, and anemia which were not having red blood cells. Okay, next, Linnaeus. First was Aristotle, then comes Linnaeus. In Linnaeus time, two kingdom system was of classification with Plantae and Animalia kingdom were developed that included all the plants and animals respectively. Okay, Aristotle classified plants on the basis like trees, shrubs, and herbs, and animals into anemia and inamia. Okay, then came Linnaeus with two kingdom classification, Plantae and Animalia. Okay, this system did not distinguish between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes. What are eukaryotes? What are prokaryotes? Prokaryotes are those organisms which don't have proper nucleus. Okay, they have incipient nucleus, that means there is no proper nuclear boundaries. But eukaryotes are those organisms which have proper nucleus boundaries. Okay, next, unicellular and multicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms which are those organisms which have only single cell. Single cell performs all the activities, whether it is respiration, digestion, excretion, all kind of activities are done by single cell. And multicellular organisms are those organisms which have many cells to perform different functions by different cells, different type of cells, and photosynthetic and non-photosynthetic. Almost all plants are photosynthetic and almost all animals are non-photosynthetic. Okay, here they have given example of green algae and fungi. See, green algae belong to plant kingdom, fungi also belong to plant kingdom, but green algae is photosynthetic and fungi is non-photosynthetic. Fungi is saprophytic, mostly saprophytic. That means it depends on dead and decaying material, organic material. Okay. Classification of organisms into plants and animals was easily done and was easy to understand, but a large number of organisms did not fall into either category. Hence, the two kingdom classification used for a long time was inadequate. That means this is the fall of two kingdom classification. It was not further used because much organisms which did not belong to, there were many organisms which did not belong to both of the kingdom. So where should we keep it? We need to study about those organisms also, no? So we could not keep these organisms in either of them. So it failed. Next, beside gross morphology, a need was also felt to include other characters like cell structure, which nature of wall, mode of nutrition, habitat, method of reproduction, evolutionary relationship also. Okay, these two classification, Aristotle and Linnaeus classification, was majorly based on morphology, how the external characters were to be seen. Okay, see, trees, shrubs, and herbs are also based on morphology only, isn't it? Okay, so these were based on morphology, so gross morphology, but not only using gross morphology, we also need to use what all things, the cell structure, how the structure of the cell is there. See, if it's plant, we have cell wall, but in animal cell, we don't have cell wall, so cell structure changes. Then comes nature of wall. Okay, if you take cell wall, it is made up of cellulose, but we don't have cellulose in human cells, isn't it? That is nature of wall. Then mode of nutrition, whether it is autotrophic, whether it is heterotrophic. If it's heterotrophic, then it is saprophytic. What kind of mode of nutrition is there? Okay. Then habitat, that means where it lives, what kind of environment it requires, kind of thing. Then method of reproduction, how it reproduces, whether it is sexually, asexual, or vegetative reproduction. Okay. Then evolutionary relationship. Okay, and this is based on the ancestral, ancestral, what do you call it as, based on ancestral characters, how the ancestral characters have been evolved in the present generation. Okay, that is evolutionary relationship. Classification system for living organisms have hence undergone several changes over time. Though plant and animal kingdom have been a constant under all different systems, the understanding of what groups or organisms be included under these kingdoms have been changing. Okay, so the basis of classification have been always changed, but animals and plant kingdom are the major kingdoms. Okay, the number of nature, the number and nature of other kingdoms have also been understood differently by different scientists over time. See, every person differs by his thinking, no? That's what they are saying. Then, this is five kingdom classification of Whittaker. Okay, see, what all he used characters are cell type. Okay, wait, I think I need to reduce this because it's taking a lot. Okay, yeah, this is good. Yes. Characters what all he used is cell type, cell wall, nuclear membrane, body organization, mode of nutrition. Cell type whether it is prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Cell wall whether it has cytoplasm, what composition, what is the chemical composition of the cell wall, or whether it is present or absent, because in animalia we don't have cell wall. Okay, then nuclear membrane, if it is prokaryotic it is absent, if it is eukaryotic it is present. Okay, then body organization, it is cellular level, multicellular, tissue level, at what level it is. Okay, see, if you come to animalia, from cellular level till organ system level of organization we have. Okay, but in Monera it's only cellular level. Okay, then mode of nutrition, whether it is autotrophic or heterotrophic. Hmm. Then to the next point, R.H. Whittaker in 1969 proposed a five kingdom classification. The kingdom defined by him were named Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. The main criteria of classification by him included cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationship. Okay, so this is a very important point. Okay, on what all basis the five kingdom classification was made? Once you need to write this one. Okay, what all are they? Cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationship. Okay, next, uh, the three domain system was also being proposed that divides kingdom Monera into two domains, leaving the remaining eukaryotic kingdoms in the three domain and thereby a six kingdom classification. You will learn about this system in detail at the higher classes. This is of no use. Like what they are saying in this para is that again kingdom Monera was divided into two domains. Okay, and then hence these five kingdom classification changes into six kingdom classification. Okay, that's what they are saying. Then let us look at this five kingdom classification to understand the issue and consideration that influence the classification system. Earlier, classification system included bacteria, blue-green algae, fungi, mosses, sperms, gymnosperms, and angiosperms under plants. Okay, there was only a whole and soul. We had only one kingdom named as Plantae, and it had all the organisms such as blue-green algae, fungi, mosses, sperms, gymnosperms, and angiosperms also. But now we have different order, different phylums. Okay, the characters that unified the whole kingdom was that they had cell wall in their cells. Okay, that's what I was saying. Plant kingdom, the main thing that differentiates plants and animals is having of cell wall. All the living organisms that come under plant kingdom have cell wall, but the other organisms which don't have cell wall all come under animalia. Okay, this placed together groups which widely differ in other characters. It brought together the prokaryotic bacteria and blue-green algae with the other groups which were eukaryotic. Okay, so this group Plantae brought prokaryotic bacteria and eukaryotic blue-green algae in the same category. It was also grouped together the unicellular organism and the multicellular organism, say once, for example, Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra. Chlamydomonas is an unicellular organism, but Spirogyra is a multicellular organism. But still, they both were in the same group. Okay, which group it was? It was algae. Okay, the classification did not differentiate between the heterotrophic group, the fungi, and the autotrophic green plants. Okay, classification. Okay, huh. Fungi are heterotrophics, but plants are heterotrophic. Fungi are heterotrophic because they can't prepare their own food. They need to depend on other organism. Let it be the saprophytic mode of nutrition. Okay, or what is it called as symbiotic association also. But green plants were not such. They could prepare their own food. That means they were heterotrophic. Though they also showed a characteristic difference in their cell wall composition. Fungi had chitin and green plants had cellulose, isn't it? And their walls, while green plant had cellulosic cell wall. Okay, fungi had chitin in their cell wall, but plants had cellulose in their cell wall. When such characteristics were considered, the fungi were placed in a separate group, a separate kingdom, that was kingdom fungi. Okay, all prokaryotic organisms were grouped together under kingdom Monera, and unicellular eukaryotic organisms were grouped under Protista. So, now the kingdom Monera and Protista were classified. Why? How? Monera had all the organisms which are prokaryotic. Hmm. And Protista had all the organisms which are eukaryotic. Okay, unicellular and eukaryotic. Kingdom Protista had brought together Chlamydomonas and Chlorella, earlier placed in algae within plant kingdom, and both have cell wall with paramecium. Okay, Kingdom Protista has brought together Chlamydomonas chlorella with paramecium and amoeba. Okay, what was the thing was that Chlamydomonas and chlorella earlier placed under algae within the plant, and both having cell wall. Chlamydomonas and chlorella had cell wall. Okay, paramecium and amoeba did not have cell wall, but still they came under Protista. Okay, it has put together organisms which in earlier classification were placed in different kingdoms. Okay, this happened because the criteria for classification changed. See, if the basis of classification changes, then organisms are again placed in some other kingdom which were not in the earlier classification. Okay, this kind of changes will take place in future to depending on the improvement in our understanding of characteristics and evolving relationship. Over time, an attempt had been made to evolve a classification system which reflects not only morphology, psychology, physiology, and reproductive similarities, but it also phylogenetic, that is based on evolutionary relationship. Okay, so classification should not only be on the basis of morphology, but also it should be based on morphology, physiology, reproductive similarities, and phylogenetic means evolutionary relationship. That's what I had said, ancestral behavior. Okay, phylogenetic, morphology, physiology, reproductive similarities, and uh, what is this, phylogenetic. Okay, in this chapter we will study mainly the kingdom Monera, Protista, fungi under Whitaker classification. Okay, under Whitaker classification we have five kingdoms. What are they? Monera, Protista, fungi, planta, and animalia. But in this chapter we are just going to read about Monera, Protista, fungi. Okay, the kingdom planta and animalia are separate, and we need to learn in details. Okay, so first coming to kingdom Monera, the sole members of kingdom Monera are bacteria. Okay, if the word Monera comes in your mind, the first thing what you should get in your mind is it's all about bacteria and bacteria, only bacteria. Okay, there are most abundant microorganisms. Bacteria occurs mostly everywhere. Hundreds of bacteria are present in handful of soil. They also live in extreme habitats such as hot springs, deserts, snow, and deep oceans. Okay, where very few other life forms can survive. Many of them live in other organisms as parasites. Okay, see, even our elementary canal, okay, the gut also has so many number of bacteria which we only don't know. And also, if you take a handful of soil, there are hundreds, thousands of bacteria present in it. Okay, even on the surface where you are sitting now, if you observe under microscopic view, you will find hundreds of bacteria. Okay, next point. Bacteria are grouped under four categories based on their shape. So there are four categories in bacteria also. On what basis they are divided? They are divided on the basis of their shape. The coccus, the rod shaped or the bacillus, the vibram, and the spiral, that is spirillum. So coccus, bacillus, vibram, and spirillum. Coccus means these are spherical in shape, round in shape. Okay, bacillus is rod shaped bacteria. Okay, then vibram is comma shaped bacteria, and then spirillum is spiral shaped bacteria. Okay, next, see, they have shown over here. Cocci are round or spherical. Bacillus are rod shaped. Spiral are they are spiral in shape. And then vibrio are comma in shape. Okay. Next, though the bacterial structure is very simple, they are very complex in behavior. Compared to many other organisms, bacteria as a group show most extensive metabolic diversity. Some of the bacteria are heterotrophic. They synthesize their own food from inorganic substances. They may photosynthetic autotrophic or chemosynthetic autotrophic. The vast majority of bacteria are heterotrophic, that is, they depend on the other organisms or dead organic matter for food. See, if you think of bacteria, the mode of nutrition is mostly heterotrophic. Okay, that means they depend on other organisms. That means they are predators and they attack on other organisms for their food. Okay, depend on other organisms or on dead organic matter or on dead organic matter. But some are photosynthetic bacteria also. No, not photosynthetic, autotrophic bacteria also. Autotrophism means preparing their own food. It may be photosynthetic or chemosynthetic. Photosynthetic means they prepare their food by using sunlight. Chemosynthetic means they prepare their own food by using chemicals. Okay, like sulfur and all they use, and then they prepare their own foods. Then comes the first class or the first division, that is archaebacteria. See, commonly explaining about archaebacteria, these are bacteria which are present in very harsh habitats, like it's the very deep sea which is very saline, the Dead Sea. Okay, you can see over there the extreme conditions. Okay, very salty kind of conditions or very high temperature conditions, like in volcanic mountains and all, or in very cold conditions like in Arctic and Antarctic oceans. Okay, there these are found. Okay, so we'll read point to point. These bacteria are special since they live in some of the most harsh habitats, as I had said you, such as extreme salty areas, that is halophytes. The bacteria which are present in extreme salty areas are halophytes. The hot springs, okay, the bacteria which are present in hot springs are called as thermoacidophiles. Okay, and marshy areas which are called as methanogens. Okay, methanogens, the very important point about these are they are used in preparing biogas. Okay, these methanogen bacteria produce methane gas, which is used which is output of biogas. Okay, then archaebacteria differ from other bacteria in having a different cell wall structure. See, if they are living in such harsh conditions, that means they can't have they need to protect themselves from these harsh conditions. No, so that means they should have a very strong shield for themselves from protecting themselves from these harsh conditions. Okay, so that means the cell structure, the cell wall composition should be different from the common bacterias. Okay, so if the cell wall structure is the chemical composition or the structure of cell wall is different, that means they can live in this kind of harsh conditions. Okay, that's what they're trying to say in this point. Archaebacteria differ from other bacteria in having different cell wall structure, and this feature is responsible for their survival in extreme conditions. Okay, as I had said you. Then methanogens are present in gut of several ruminant animals such as cows, buffaloes, and they are responsible for production of methane or biogas from the dung of these animals. See, rudimentary animals such as cows and buffaloes. See, methanogen bacteria, as I had said you, they are used in production of biogas. These are present in the gut of rudimentary ruminant animals, okay, such as cows and buffaloes. And they are also responsible for production of methane in biogas plant. Okay, Next, the next category is eubacteria. U itself means it is true. See, if it is pseudo, it means false. If it is u, it means true. Okay, eubacteria, that means these are true bacteria. Okay, these are thousands of different eubacteria or true bacteria. They are characterized by presence of rigid cell wall, and if motile, a flagellum. See, the common characteristics of eubacteria are they have rigid cell wall, and if they are motile, in case, okay, it's very specific over there. If motile, that means in case if they are motile, then they have flagellum. Otherwise, they don't have flagellum. Okay, they have rigid cell wall and flagellum if they are motile. The cyanobacteria. Okay, the cyanobacteria have chlorophyll A, similar to green plants, and photosynthetic autotrophs. Okay, the cyanobacteria, the common name of cyanobacteria is blue green algae. Blue green algae. Okay, have chlorophyll A. These have chlorophyll A, which are present in green plants. Okay, which are photosynthetic. The cyanobacteria are unicellular, colonial, and filamentous, freshwater or marine or terrestrial algae. Okay, cyanobacteria are unicellular, they are colonial, they are filamentous, and they may be present in freshwater, marine water, or terrestrial also, on or on land also. Okay, first thing, the features of cyanobacteria are they are unicellular, they are present in colonies. See, if they are unicellular, that means they should be present in groups, isn't it? Okay, they may be present separately also, but majoritarily we find a colony, that means they are present in groups. Or filamentous, either they are present in colonies or they are filamentous. Okay, next, where we find them, they may be present in freshwater, marine water, or also maybe terrestrial. Okay, the colonies are generally surrounded by gelatinous sheath. They often form blooms in polluted water bodies. Some of these organisms can fix atmospheric nitrogen in specialized cell called as heterocyst. Example, nostoc and Anabina. Okay, chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria oxides various inorganic substances such as nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia, and use the released energy for their ATP production. They play a great role in recycling nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Okay, see, if we come to photosynthetic autotrophs, first thing, the cyanobacteria is unicellular, colonial, filamentous, and they may be present in freshwater, marine water, or terrestrial. Okay, these, when they are present in colonies or they are filamentous, they have a gelatinous sheath covering them from outside. Okay, and then in polluted ponds or lakes, you find the green patchy thing which floats. Okay, which floats on water, that is called as algal blooms. Okay, they form blooms in polluted water bodies. They also fixed atmospheric nitrogen. See, there is we have abundance of nitrogen in our atmosphere. Okay, but still our plants can't utilize the nitrogen directly from the atmosphere. So these bacteria, okay, this cyanobacteria is very useful for converting the atmospheric nitrogen into the nitrogenous form in which a plant can absorb it. Okay, so that is very important for our plants. Okay, then it happens in a special cell called as heterocyst. Okay, you can see over here, it's a Nostoc diagram. You can see the mucilaginous sheath or the gelatinous sheath, and then a specialized cell called as heterocyst. There are two heterocysts in this organism. Okay, Nostoc and Anabina are example, Nostoc and Anabina. Okay, these are example for nitrogen fixing bacteria. Okay, then chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria oxides various inorganic substances such as nitrate. That's what I was saying. Chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria. Okay, they also oxides various inorganic substances such as nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia, and use the released energy for their ATP production. Okay, they play a greater role in recycling nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and iron and sulfur. Okay, see, you need to recycle the nutrients also. Okay, so what kind of nutrients they recycle is that is nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Then heterotrophic bacteria are most abundant in nature. The majority of important decomposers, many of them have significant impact on human affairs. They help in making of curd from milk, production of antibiotics, fixing nitrogen in legume plants. Okay, heterotrophic bacteria are very important for human purposes. Okay, first thing, they act as decomposers. If these heterotrophic bacteria are not present in the world, that means all the dead and decaying, only the dead organisms will be as like if an organism is dead now, even after 10 years or even after 20 years, if you go over there, the organism will be still like that only. But because of these heterotrophic bacteria, the material, the dead organic material, is digested completely, and then there is no residue left out. Okay, then these heterotrophic bacteria are also useful for humans in making some, like edibles or useful things for humankind. First thing, preparation of curd. Curd is made from lactobacillus bacteria. Okay, then these bacteria also can be used for producing antibiotics. As said, nostoc and anibina are example for the bacteria which fixes nitrogen in legume plants. Okay, next point, legume roots, example, etc. Some pathogen causing damage to human crops, farms, animals, and pets. See, not only bacteria are very useful for us, some bacteria are also present which causes damage to humankind. Okay, they causes some diseases in humankind. They are named over here: cholera, typhoid, tetanus, citrus canker, as well as are well known diseases caused by different bacteria. Okay, bacteria reproduces mainly by fission, that is mainly by binary fission. Okay, sometimes under unfavorable conditions they produce spores, that is by cyst formation. Okay, they also reproduce by a sort of sexual reproduction by adopting a primitive type of DNA transfer from one bacteria to the other bacteria. Okay, this reproduction in bacteria you can learn in your next upcoming classes. When you go to BSc and all, you can learn in very depth. Okay, then comes the mycoplasm. The mycoplasm are organisms that completely lack a cell wall. They are the smallest living cell known and can survive without oxygen. See, the all points written about mycoplasma are very important. First thing, there are organisms that are completely lacking in cell wall. They don't have cell wall at all. They are the smallest living organism which can live without oxygen. Okay, many mycoplasms are pathogenic in animals and plants. They are pathogenic means they can cause disease. They are virulent. Okay, they cause diseases in animals and plants. Okay, now we have finished kingdom bacteria. Okay, what was it? Monera. We have finished kingdom Monera. Then coming to kingdom Protista. Protista are almost all single celled eukaryotic. See, Monera were prokaryotic, isn't it? These are eukaryotic. All single celled eukaryotes are placed under Protista, but boundaries of these kingdoms are not well defined. What may be photosynthetic protestant to one biologist may be a plant to another. In this book, we will include Christophites, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime lords, and slime molds, and protozoans under Protista. Okay, means they are going. They said what all we are going to study about. Members of Protista are primarily aquatic. These kingdoms form a link with the other dealing with plants, animals, and fungi. This is a link. That is, this is a bridge. Okay, between plants, animals, and fungi. Okay, being eukaryotes. That means this. Why they are bridge? Because these are the first eukaryotic animals. Okay, being eukaryotes, the protestant cell body contains well-defined nucleus and other membrane-bounded organelles. Okay, see, prokaryotes, those are animals which don't have proper nuclear boundary, but eukaryotes are those organisms which have proper nuclear boundary. That means well-defined nucleus and also have other membrane-bounded organelles. Some have flagella or cilia. Protistas reproduce asexually and sexually by the process involving in cell fusion and zygote formation. Okay, they produce both by sexual and asexual methods. Then Christophites, no, Chrysophites. This group includes diatoms and golden algae. They are found in fresh waters as well as in marine waters. They are found in fresh waters and marine waters. They are microscopic and float passively in water current. That example is uh, phytoplankton. No, it's plankton. Most of them are photosynthetic. In diatoms, the cell wall of the two thin overlapping shell which fit together as in a soap box. The wall are embedded with silica and thus the wall is indestructible. Okay, see they are explaining the structure of diatoms. The cell walls form two thin overlapping shells. Okay, which together fit one another together like the soap box. See, if you have seen the soap box, we have two lids, not two lids. One is the bottom part and another is the top part, which go correctly into each other. Like, okay, it's very soft movement. Okay, they are saying the same thing. The walls are embedded with silica and thus the walls are indestructible. The walls are made up of silica and it is indestructible. Thus, diatoms can be left behind large amount of cell wall deposition in their habitat. Okay, when these diatoms accumulate, okay, they form a diatomaceous earth. This accumulation over a billions of years refers as to be a diatomaceous earth. Okay, these are used. Okay, this diatomaceous earth then are used for making polishing, filtration of oils and syrups. Used in polishing, filtration of oils and syrups. Diatoms are the chief producers of ocean. So, who is the chief producer of ocean? It is diatoms. Okay. Next, dinoflagellates. These organisms are mostly marine and photosynthetic. They appear yellow, green, brown, blue, or red, depending on the pigments present in their cell. See, even in our body, some areas which are very black. Okay, you see, if you have a pimple and all, after the pimple goes off, also there is a black spot over there. Why? It's because of higher melanin production in our body. So melanin is a pigment which gives black color or dark color to our body. In the same kind, these organisms, that is dinoflagellates, also have certain pigments which give different colors like yellow, green, blue, brown, and red. Okay. Then the cell wall has stiff cellulose plates on the outer surface. Okay, they have cellulose plates on the outer surface. Most of them have two flagella, one lies longitudinal and the other transverse in the furrow between the wall plates. Very often, red dinoflagellates undergo such rapid multiplication that they make the sea appear red. Okay, toxins released by such a large number may even kill other marine animals such as fishes. See, red dinoflagellates undergo reproduction very easily. Uh, uh, not recently, like it's quite time. The Lunar Lake in Maharashtra turned pinkish red in color. Okay, the Lunar Lake, it's an asteroid lake. Okay, an asteroid hit the Earth and then it was having some depression, which then converted into lake. Okay, so now recently it turned into reddish pink color. That may be due to this dinoflagellate. Maybe. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. Okay, then toxin released by such large numbers may even kill the other marine organisms such as fishes. Okay, then euglenoids, majority of them are freshwaters. Okay, they are freshwater living and found in stagnant water instead of cell wall. See, these don't have cell wall. Okay, they have a layer of protein, a layer of protein. Okay, let me read the line. Instead of cell wall, they have a protein rich layer called pellicil, which makes their body flexible. Okay, these are flexible in nature because of protein rich layer, that is pellicil. They have two flagella and one short and one long. Okay, though they are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight, when deprived of sunlight, they behave as heterotrophs by predating the other smaller organisms. Okay, see, euglenids have dual nature. Okay, if they in the presence of sunlight, they behave as if they are heterotrophs, but when sunlight is not there, they behave as heterotrophs. Okay, heterotrophs, they produce their own food. Heterotrophs, they predate. Okay, they depend on other organisms. Okay, interestingly, the pigments present in see, if they are photosynthetic, that means they need to have the pigments which are present in higher organisms which are photosynthetic like plants, isn't it? So they have the same pigment which is present in higher plants, that is chlorophyll. Okay, example is euglena. Okay. Hmm. Then slime molds. Slime molds are saprophytic protistans. See, these are saprophytic protistans. That means they depend on dead and decaying organic materials. Okay, not decaying, it's only dead. Okay, they depend on dead organic materials. The body moves along with decaying twigs and leaves, engulfing organic matter. Okay, under suitable conditions, they form a aggregation called plasmodium, which may grow and spread over several feet. During unfavorable conditions, the plasmodium differentiate and form fruiting bodies, bearing spores at their tips. These spores possess true wall. They true walls. They are extremely resistant and survive for many years, even under adverse conditions. The spore are dispersed by air currents. See, this is a process in which, like, if the conditions undergo are not suitable, okay, the conditions are not suitable, they do such kind of things. First, in the suitable conditions, they aggregate. Okay, they aggregate and form a compact mass called as plasmodium, and then they grow over to several feet. Okay, and then when the conditions turn unfavorable, with that means it can't survive anymore, then it starts to form spores, and then spores are dispersed by air currents, and then when they settle down and when the uh, the conditions become again suitable, they grow into new organisms. So that is how they reproduce and also save themselves from extinction. Okay, then comes protozoans. All protozoans are heterotrophs and live as predators or parasites. So all protozoans, as a clear statement, all protozoans are heterotrophs. That means they depend on other organisms, either they may be predators or parasites. Predators means the organisms which kill the other organism and eat. Okay, parasites means those organisms which live in or on the organism and then feed on the organism, on the living organism. Okay, they are believed to be primitive relatives of animals. They are of four major groups of protozoans. First thing is amoeboid protozoans. These organisms live in fresh water, sea water, or moist soil. Okay, see, the name itself suggests amoeboid protozoans. See, protozoans are classified on the basis of their locomotion, how they move. Okay, so first one is amoeboid protozoan. That means they have amoeboic movement. How? That is by pseudopodia. Okay, amoeboid movement, they capture by the pseudopodia. See, they putting out the pseudopodia, the false foot, as in amoeba. Example is ant amoeba, which is a parasite. Then comes flagellated protozoans. Again, the name itself suggests that they have flagellum, okay, or flagella. Okay, these are disease causing parasites. Example of that disease is sleeping sickness, which is by trypanosoma. Okay, the protozoa which causes sleeping sickness is trypanosoma. Then ciliated protozoans. Ciliated protozoans are those protozoans which have cilia in them. Okay, cilia is like, it's not like flagella. They are very very small hair like structures on the body. Flagella is a very big structure, like one big tail. Okay, so it's one flagella is capable of locomotion, but one cilia is not capable of motion. So we need to have number of cilia in entire the body. Okay, on entire body. So when these cilia move in a coordinated manner, then the organisms are capable of locomotion. Okay, the example is paramecium. Then sporozoans. Okay, these are infectious spore like stages in, okay, wait, this includes diverse organisms. Okay, there are many organisms that have an infectious spore stage in their life cycle. That means one infectious spore stage is almost all present in all the organisms which belong to sporozoans. For example, they are giving us as plasmodium. Okay, plasmodium is malaria causing parasite. Okay, so malarial parasite which causes malaria, a disease which has staggering effect on human population. Okay, so now I have completed two major kingdoms. The left out is fungi, and then fungi, plantae, animalia, and virus, viroids, lichens, and all. I'll complete in the next class. So please, if you have liked the video, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And if you have any doubts or questions, please comment in the comment section. Thank you.